أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Dearest brothers and sisters in Islam, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome to another episode of Coachmumdoo, where we drive engagement and well-being through our professional development courses and coaching services. Experience shows that a blind person has generally a stronger memory and certain senses which are more developed than those of an ordinary person who has sight. In other words, if certain faculties are not utilized, they may strengthen other faculties. Similar is the relation between the body and the soul. As Muslims around the world prepare to begin another month long of fasting, they weaken their bodies from the absence of food and water, which in turn strengthens their spirit, just as the pruning of the branches of a tree procures more fruits and flowers. When an individual fasts, they over time build resiliency to resist temptation and in the process build capacity for self-control and self-discipline. This has a profound effect on the purification of the self in removing harmful habits and replacing them with new habits, such as the inclination for an increase in charity. However, if one is to truly benefit from the spiritual elements of fasting, they must ensure they manage their health appropriately. If one does not manage their health and wellness of their physical body, they will not be able to entertain the spiritual benefits that this month has to offer. It is therefore important that we prepare appropriately, and we thought it would be fitting that before the start of the month of Ramadan, that we invite a registered dietitian to ensure that we can provide the extensive knowledge that everyone requires to have a great month of Ramadan that will be full of well-being. So it is an honor and a pleasure to welcome to this episode Sister Anar Allidina. Sister Anar is a registered dietitian and a certified diabetes educator. She has a passion for delicious food and good health. Her goal is to help busy people live healthier lives. Her area of specialty is insulin resistance to better manage blood sugar, inflammation, and overall hormone health. Her goal is to help treat the causes of these conditions and not just the symptoms. She firmly believes that making small, sustainable lifestyle changes is the key to overall success and well-being. She's a clinical dietitian at the Medcan Clinic in Toronto, and she also has a virtual practice where she sees clients across the globe. Please help me in welcoming Sister Anar Allidina, and don't forget that if you do take anything from this video, be sure to like and subscribe this video to ensure that we can provide you content that you're going to gain benefit from. Enjoy the episode, and we look forward to your comments. Have a wonderful day. Assalamu alaikum, everyone. It's indeed my pleasure and honor to welcome Sister Anar Allidina, registered dietitian. Sister Anar, assalamu alaikum, and how are you?
Alaikum salam. Thank you so much for having me. I'm doing well. How are you doing?
Excellent. Thank you for asking. It's like I said, it's indeed an honor and a pleasure to have you, and we're definitely very excited, and we thought it would be fitting to talk to you, especially as we're leading now into the days of Ramadan. Countdown has begun. It's
Yeah.
less than a month away. Very surprising, and we've been in this pandemic for the last year or so, and studies are really showing the impact that this pandemic has had on our mental health, and especially with individuals with chronic conditions like diabetes and cardiovascular diseases, cancers, etc. And a big issue that we're having is because those chronic conditions are actually getting worse in this pandemic, it's affecting their mental health that much more. And one of the risk factors associated, with these diseases is nutrition. And I
Right.
thought that it would be fitting for us to talk a little bit about that as we head into Ramadan to try to really mitigate some of these risk factors for members of our community or those who are practicing the fasting during the month of Ramadan. But before we get into that, Sister Anar, I just wanted
Mhm.
to have a quick conversation in terms of why you actually decided to be a registered dietitian and kind of what led you down that path.
That's a really good question. It actually goes back to high school. So my family is from Ontario, but when I was in ninth grade, my family moved to Southern California, to San Diego, and I had started 10th grade there. It was an absolute culture shock. It was just like the movies. The high like everyone there was so healthy. It was just like I didn't experience that in Ontario. So it was just like mind blowing. Living in Southern California, we had access to the ocean. There's so many great, vegetables and fruits that are grown in California just because of their climate. So you had access to all these amazing food as well. And, everyone there was really healthy.
Mm.
So even at our high school, like, they had PE, but then they had different types of PE that you could do. It was just so geared towards healthy living. And I absolutely embraced it. I was just like, this is amazing. Like, where have I been this whole time? So that's pretty much how I kind of got into, nutrition and fitness. Just by, seeing my friends, seeing what the community was like there, it was just so great, and there's no winter there. It's beautiful weather all the time, so that's really what led me to kind of go into the nutrition and fitness lifestyle. And then I completed university there, and then I moved back to Canada, and I did a kinesiology degree, a science and kinesiology degree at University of Waterloo. I loved it. And after that, my first job, I actually had moved to the States, and my first job was in corporate wellness. So I did a lot of teaching of classes, but that's when I got into nutrition. And, just seeing the two combined was just really powerful. And I went back to do schooling to do my registered dietitian, and as well as my master's in public health. And that's where I've been. And as a dietitian now, I've been a dietitian for over 10 years. I've specialized in diabetes, which I find absolutely fascinating because diabetes, there's no cure for it. And you can see firsthand how your lifestyle and your diet choices can have a huge impact on that disease and preventing it as well, which I find incredibly powerful. And I really enjoy my work in that space.
And I'm happy that you brought up diabetes because, on the corporate wellness side, which is, what I'm doing, as an HR professional, whenever we pull out our reports on our drug spend when it comes to our plan members, diabetes is always at the top of that list. Obviously, the drugs aren't as expensive, but the sheer volume of
Of course.
those particular drugs that people are consuming for their health is massive. And so, based on, what you've seen in that world and now being a dietitian for over 10 years,
Mhm.
and I know you specialize in more the South Asian communities.
Right.
What are the top three challenges you're seeing based on your experience in terms of our challenges in the South Asian community from a nutritional standpoint?
Yeah, so being South Asian puts us at risk, and that has to do with our genetic makeup. Our blood vessels are narrower, and they've even shown studies that South Asian babies who tend to be leaner, because we tend to be smaller, they actually carry more fat in their abdominal section. Okay. And that makes it very difficult because all our organs are there, right? So it makes it very challenging.
No, absolutely. And so and that's an interesting standpoint. And I think that a lot of people look to Ramadan to really
Mhm.
help them deal with some of those challenges. And as we go through a intermittent fasting or a different window of feeding, a lot of people look to Ramadan to say, okay, you know what? Now is the time for me to really get my nutrition under control. I've got a smaller eating window, which means I
Exactly.
should be consuming less calories and I'm going to try to be healthier. But, it's funny because when you actually look at the limited studies we do have on Ramadan, 60% of those who fast actually gain weight after Ramadan is over. So,
Oh,
now that, now that we're having another Ramadan at home and hopefully the last one, we
yeah,
have a little bit more control over, what we're actually putting into our body. So many people will tend to break their fast at mosque sometimes,
mhm,
if it was a typical normal year. And so, I think that it's an amazing opportunity to have breaking of the fast being conducted at home when we actually have control over what it is that we're going to be eating. So I thought it would be a great exercise for us to kind of walk through our breaking of the fast process. And
mhm,
as we go through that, perhaps you can give your best hacks or your best tricks or tricks to determine us at the end of Ramadan, making sure that we're a lot more healthier and decreasing our risk, especially when it comes to inflammatory conditions,
right.
like cancers and cardiovascular and diabetes to a lesser degree. So, let's start with us breaking of the fast. So, typical, Muslims will break their fast with some dates.
Right.
And so I just wanted to get your perspective on the breaking of the fast with dates, because obviously there's lots of studies that show that there's an increased amount of fiber in dates, which is fantastic, but it's also high in sugar.
Right.
So just wanted to get your take on the whole dates issue.
Yeah. And that's a great place to start because I get so many questions on that. So, yes, dates are incredibly nutrient dense. There's a lot of vitamins and minerals, and it's a great source of carbohydrate. Now, dates, like all other dried fruit, they have been evaporated of their water content, right? So it's just a very concentrated amount of sugar. Now, if you're having one date, that's absolutely okay. You can definitely have that. If you're having a few more than three, then I would say, scale back on your portions, keep it to 1 to 2, and then, go from there. So you want to break your fast with a date, but you really just want to keep your portions in check, especially if you're watching your blood sugars. And another thing you could do is have some dates with some protein. So like nuts, for example, that's a great way to kind of help stabilize your blood sugar because you're getting some protein along with a carbohydrate, and it's just going to level off. So, if you are used to having several dates, keep it to 1 or 2 and have a handful of almonds or walnuts or even seeds like pumpkin seeds to kind of keep you
Perfect.
safe.
Perfect. So, we can start off with that. And then what's next?
Okay.
Is there anything that you suggest before having the meal? Like, for example, water. Obviously, we've been
Yeah.
dehydrated for the whole day. Is it important to break our fast with the date with water? Or should we have our meal first and water at the end? What's your recommendation as to what should come next?
So I would say hydrate. That's the first thing you want to do. You haven't had any fluids in your body. And also, a lot of people like to drink tea when they break fast. And obviously that has milk and, it has caffeine. So before you caffeinate, you want to hydrate. So, have a cup of water before you have your tea. And then for every caffeinated beverage you have, you want to drink a cup of water after that to offset that dehydration. So, break your fast with some dates, have some water, and then move on if you're going to have tea. Um, you can have some water, and then you really want to try to have a lot of water rich foods. Okay. So I'm talking about vegetables and fruit. So, breaking your fast with a salad would be nice. If you want something warm, you've been fasting all day, doing soups is such a great way because you're getting in all that fluid and you're also getting in a lot of good nutrition from like the vegetables and the protein that's in there. So it's such a great healthy way to break your fast with some soup. And then you want to start with your meal. But really, you want to, your whole body during the fast has gone through, with any food or water. So when you break your fast, you want to kind of think about that and think about what you can give your body to sustain it so that you can do that again. Because fasting is not just Ramadan is not just a day or a few days, an entire month, right? So how we fuel ourselves, and if we just be a bit more intentional with it and think about how we can honor our body, it is just going to be so impactful for the rest of the month. Your energy levels, are just going to be a lot higher. So, starting with some water, some hydrating foods, such as a soup or some salads, some vegetables, even some fresh fruit, and then moving on to your meal. So if you feel like you're full, you wanted to take a break, you could go say your prayers and then come back to have your meal, just to space that out a little bit if you find it too much at once. And because we're home now, we're not rushing to go to the mosque, we're not really having iftars anywhere. So we can really take that time to kind of slow down, break your fast, have a little bit of a break, go do your prayers, and then come back to your meal.
No, that's great advice. And you brought up something that's important to many of us, and that was tea or a caffeinated drink. So, I think, telling people to remove that from their diet is going to be something that's very difficult. So do you have any particular hacks or tricks that you would recommend to, anyone who is watching in terms of, making the tea a little bit healthier, or a little bit more tolerable for our body? Because, we have, evaporated milk in there, which obviously has a high level of sugar content and high fat content. And then we're adding more sugar to the tea as well. So any particular tricks or anything that you could recommend for people?
Yeah. So when you are making tea, adding in some like cinnamon or cardamom to give it some flavor would be such a great way. So that way you can reduce the amount of sugar that you're adding in. If you're using evaporated milk, that's fine. Just try to use a smaller amount, or you can switch to regular milk. But I would say if you're able to scale back on the sugar, if you usually take 2, try to take 1. That would be a great place to start. Just reducing the sugars firsthand. And then again, by adding some of like the cardamom and some other spices, we'll just give it so much flavor, even vanilla. So that would be a great way. Or just decreasing how much of it you're having as well, right? So if someone's there has like a really big cup of tea or has a couple of them, just scaling back on how much you're having. And it's so important, again, to hydrate with water after you have tea, just to offset that dehydration. And then, some people are sensitive to caffeine, right? So you want to keep that in mind as well, because our sleep is also disrupted during this month. So keeping that in mind is also really, really important as well. Yeah.
Right. Now, is there a particular time that you would recommend to have tea? Is it before the meal? Is it after the meal? What would be your recommendation?
Yeah. So, it's all on preference, to be quite honest. I would say usually if you break your fast with tea, just having that warmth, I know that's a lot of people like that. So starting when you break your fast, having your tea would be fine. I mean, but if you prefer to have it after, then that's okay as well. So it's all on preference. But I mean, the earlier you have it, the better your body's able to metabolize it. So if you're someone who's sensitive to caffeine, that's something to really keep in mind. Or you could just not have, caffeine all month, which I don't know if that can be doable for
No, definitely. Yeah, it's going to be a challenge for sure.
Yeah.
So after we have some water rich content in terms of
Right.
vegetables or fruits, obviously we've gone through a day without any water, and as you mentioned, that would be important to break the fast with some water as well. But
Right.
we've obviously lost a lot of minerals in the process, and minerals are important in terms of metabolism as well. So a lot of salt, for example, we lose. So is there any particular recommendation in terms of getting more salt in? Like perhaps, putting on some watermelon or, things like that? Or is that something that's important that we need to be more cognizant of? Or does our
Yeah.
diet, which is
Yeah.
high in salt, kind of offset that? So what would be your recommendation when it comes to that?
Yeah. So, whatever your meal is going to be, likely there's going to be some salt added to that. So there's nothing additional, sodium that you would need to add necessarily. But again, that's why focusing on having whole foods, like a lot of fruit, a lot of vegetables that have all those minerals in them, the potassium, the magnesium, which yes, your cells need to replenish that. So definitely sticking to whole foods is your best bet. Whole
Perfect.
foods, whole grains, those are all great ways to kind of replenish your cellular health as well.
Excellent. No, that's great advice. So, what would be your recommendations when it comes to the next part of the meal? So let's say we go pray, we're coming back, and we're hungry again now. So we're come to the main meal. What recommendations would you have in terms of putting together your main meal?
Yeah. So again, it's all about balancing your meal, right? So you want to have a form of carbohydrate, ideally a whole grain. And the reason for that is, again, you're getting that fiber, right? Another really important nutrient that we're not getting all day. So if you're doing a whole grain, such as brown rice, quinoa, those are good sources. And then having a protein source. Okay. So you want to try to aim to have 20 to 30 grams of protein at this meal. And it's not a lot. So, like a palm full of chicken, meat, fish, lentils, beans, those are such great ways to get in protein and fiber, the plant proteins. So, you want to make sure you're getting in whole grain, you're getting in protein, and you're getting in some sort of healthy fats. So this could be, when you're cooking your food, using healthy oils such as olive oil, to get in some of those healthy fats in there as well. So it's all about just, making sure your portions are in check. So, when you are having rice or bread or naan, you want to make sure when you're looking at your plate, you want to try to portion that so it's like a quarter of your plate. Okay, not the whole plate, just a quarter of it. And then you want a quarter of it to be your protein. And then the remaining could be, a vegetable source. So having some just regular raw vegetables, or like the soup I mentioned, or even doing a salad. That way you're hitting, all the nutrients that you want to get in. You want to get in the fiber. You definitely want to get in protein. That is so important. And you're getting in all the minerals and vitamins as well.
Perfect. A lot of us will tend to have an appetizer before our main meal. And that often involves, things that are fried, like
Right.
fried samosas or fried kebabs.
Yeah.
Or any particular hacks or any particular suggestions or recommendations for people I mean, we all crave it, right? At the
Yeah,
beginning,
of
we
course.
have to have that. So I know your philosophy is that of moderation.
Right.
But any particular hacks that you could recommend when it comes to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So getting an air fryer is probably one of the best things you can do. And it's going to get
Perfect.
used during this month. And there's, like so many things that can be used in the air fryer that you don't need to do the frying for. Because when we fry foods, we're just getting in a lot of fat, right? And that's going to it's going to fill you up, but then you're not going to be getting the other nutrients you want with it, and having a lot of deep fried foods can also, make you thirsty. So, especially if you're looking to change habits or, for weight loss, making that sustainable, staying away from those fried foods is going to be one of the best things you can do. Now, I'm not saying, you can't have any fried food at all, but, maybe like twice a week you can, have fried food, and the rest you can try to air fry it. I know the Ninja Grill. I don't know if you have that. I don't. I have
I
the
do.
yeah, like everyone raves about that. So that would be a fantastic kitchen appliance that you can use all year around, but especially during Ramadan, to air fry samosas, French fries, spring rolls, or whatever, you want to have. So, and again, keeping those foods to like one or two in terms of portion size. But again, you want to break your fast. You want to have your water. You want to get in some of those whole foods, fruits, vegetables, those hydrating foods. And then, ideally it would be nice to have your meal and then the fried stuff, but you can kind of play around to see how that works for you. But again, an air fryer is probably one of the best things that you can do in terms of kind of making your Ramadan a bit healthier. So you're not getting in so much fried stuff.
Perfect. And we'll put a description in the link below to that so that people can have easy access to that. But
Yeah.
having said that, what oil should people use in their air fryer? Is it avocado oil? Is it olive oil? What would you recommend?
Okay. So one of the healthiest oils, that's been researched forever is olive oil. That is one of the best oils we can use. Now, when you are frying something, the temperature needs to be really high. So you can't use olive oil. You can only use the seed oils like canola or like vegetable oil and corn oil, which is not the best because that can be very inflammatory. So if you're using an air fryer, it's great because you can use, at a lower temperature, you can use olive oil or avocado oil would be another great option. And again, just having a little bit and having like brushing it on, like if you're having a samosa, you just brush it on 2 sides and you pop that in the air fryer. And that would be enough, to gain that crispiness. So I would say definitely olive oil or avocado oil would be your best bet.
Perfect. And, once we're done the meal, probably spend some time with the family, listen to some duas, that type of thing. And then, prior to going to bed, would you say don't eat prior to going to bed and just wake up for suhoor? Because some people do decide to eat prior to going to bed because the fasts are longer now, and then they don't wake up for suhoor. So, it's a 2-part question, I guess, for those who don't wake up for suhoor and those who don't.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the best things you can do, and I think one of the most important meals during Ramadan is your early morning meal, so suhoor. So really waking up for that and just taking 10 minutes to eat something is going to do wonders for your energy levels and for your fast, right? Like that's just one of the best things you can do. And I know not everyone can wake up, but if you're able to, I highly encourage and recommend that, especially again, talking about weight loss and healthy eating, because we're going through such a long stretch of not eating, getting that early morning meal is so important. And it's also important on what you're adding to that. So you definitely want to have a protein source. So this could be like egg, cheese. It could be animal protein as well, chicken, some leftovers if you'd like. Dairy, like cow's milk is a great source of protein as well. So doing something like an oatmeal in the morning, or even prepping that the night before, so it's just quick and easy in the morning, that would be great because oatmeal has fiber in it, which keeps you full for longer, right? And that's what we want to do. We really want to be intentional about the foods that we're choosing because we want them to multitask, right? We obviously want it to taste good. We want it to keep us full for longer, and we want it to give us nutrients. So that's how I want you guys to think during Ramadan, especially, okay? We go through the entire month of so much self-discipline, a lot of mind work, I think, right? And that shouldn't just end with the fast. That should carry us through with other aspects of our lives, whether it's our work, how we eat, being really intentional and knowing that, we can do hard things and make those right decisions that can really honor our body as well. Right. So, when you are having your early morning meal, well, first of all, I highly encourage you wake up for that. And then you just want to make sure you're adding the right foods in there that's going to really help you. So having just like a slice of toast with butter, that's not going to do much for you. But if you add like a nut butter, like almond butter or peanut butter, you're getting that protein, you're getting some healthy fats in there, slicing up some fruits, some banana. Again, you're just getting those vitamins and minerals that we talked about. Having said that, okay, I understand not everyone can wake up that early or they don't want to. And some people have the luxury of flipping their schedules around, which is great. But I would say if you're keeping your portions in check at iftar, then definitely you want to eat something in the evening before going to bed as well. So this could be, it could be a small snack, some crackers, some cheese. It could be, I really like to have some chia seed pudding in the evening before I go to bed. Chia seeds are really, really high in fiber, tons of nutrients. It's definitely one of those foods that multitask. And because they hold on to water, it's great because it's slowly released in your body. So it keeps you hydrated. And then topping that with some nuts and some fruit is another way, again, to get in some healthy fats and to get in some vitamins and minerals as well. So it's kind of like a dessert. It's just like a small portion, having that before I go to bed and then waking up again to have the suhoor. And that, it could be like a hard boiled egg. It all depends on how you're feeling, right? Like if you want to make eggs that early in the morning, or if you want to have something cold versus warm, but really making sure you're getting in that protein is going to be so important to kind of keep you satiated, or, feeling satisfied as much as possible while you're fasting.
Two questions came up, when we were preparing to meet with you and discussing this with you. And that was, when it comes to probiotics, do you recommend supplementing with probiotics during the month of Ramadan?
Okay, that's a really good question. And no, I don't. Mainly because probiotics for some people, it can, depending on your digestion, it won't help you. But for some people it can. So for me to give a blanket, recommendation, like, yeah, everyone should take a probiotic. No, I don't agree with that, but I do encourage you to stick to whole foods that have those good bacteria in them. And those foods like yogurt, such a great food to include. Okay. Yogurt, kefir, it's like a fermented yogurt drink, even making a smoothie. Remember how we talked about, like, you could, when you break your fast, getting in all those good nutrients. So doing a smoothie or having that before you go to bed, or even in suhoor, would be such a great way. And adding some yogurt or kefir to that would be a great way to get those probiotics in naturally. Another thing that can help your gut bacteria is to get enough fiber in your diet. So fiber is only found in plant foods. Okay, so we're talking about fruits, vegetables, nuts and seeds, and beans and lentils and whole grains. So those foods really help with nurturing our gut bacteria. So if you're not having any fiber in your diet and you're taking a probiotic, that's not going to do anything for you. So you really want to look at diet first. If you're someone who takes a probiotic regularly, then you can go ahead and do that. But if you haven't and think that, okay, it's Ramadan, I should take a probiotic, I don't think that's a good idea. I think you want to look at your diet first and make sure you're hitting all of those things, like, probiotic rich foods, as well as high fiber foods. That would be your biggest takeaway in terms of supporting your gut health, for sure.
No, definitely great advice. So thanks for sharing. And I guess, as we kind of bring our session to a close, one of the last questions that I wanted to ask you is in terms of, it's great that we're providing all this wonderful advice to, our viewers and members of our communities across North America and Europe. But, actually making the change and actually going through is a completely different conversation. And, obviously with you being a dietitian, what advice do you give to your clients so that they can actually stick to some of the recommendations that you're offering?
Yeah. So again, it's starting small. If this information you feel too overwhelming, start with one thing, right? And that could be cutting your caffeine back. It could be just reducing the sugars that you're having. It could be just adding more vegetables during the month of Ramadan. Honestly, that would probably be the best advice, is just try to get more vegetables in. It's hard to, obviously, because we're fasting, but during those non-fasting hours are so important. So if you can just focus, okay, I'm going to have 3 cups of vegetables every day in Ramadan. That's it. That's a great place to start. So want to think about what you can add to your diet instead of taking away. So instead of being like, oh, I'm not going to have any fried food, maybe that could work for some people, but think about what you can add. So yes, I'm going to have 3 cups of vegetables in. I'm going to, drinks, 8 glasses of water, or try to, right? So think about what you can add and incorporate instead of taking out. So that's what I would.
Sorry to cut you off there. Do you recommend like a food journal for people to keep track of their food in Ramadan?
Yeah, I think that would be fantastic. By writing down what you're doing, you can be so intentional. And let's say you had a good few days of fasting. You can go back and see how you did, right? You can see, oh, I had this, and maybe that helps with my energy levels, right? You can link how you're feeling to certain foods that you're incorporating in your diet. So absolutely. Doing a food journal would be a great way to stay accountable and to kind of really be, trying to make those connections, for sure.
If someone came to you and said, hey, I want to actually start a diet in the month of Ramadan, is there a particular diet that you could recommend, one over another?
That's a good question. I would say just stick to having more whole foods. So this is going to just naturally eliminate a lot of processed foods, like a lot of sugary stuff, a lot of salty stuff, like chips, cookies. Sticking to whole foods is going to, that's what I would recommend. Because starting a diet while you're fasting, I mean, I don't know, you don't want to kind of burn yourself out.
Sure. No, that's great advice.
Right. You want to think about healthy habits, because any diet that you start, all diets, they have the same core beliefs of like eating more whole foods, eating more vegetables, staying away from sugar. So if you just make those kind of part of your Ramadan diet, I think that will just help set you up for success for sure.
No, definitely. I mean, every diet works. It's just no one can stick to them, right? And so I think that's the biggest issue that I think people do face. So incorporating more of your favorite foods into your diet that are healthy is something that's great advice that you've recommended for sure.
Like I mentioned, like the air fryer, swapping out some foods for higher fiber foods, just making small changes like that. Even if you want to have something sweet, there's so many different sweeteners out there that you can use instead of like white refined sugar, right? Or cutting back on how much sugar you're using in a recipe. Those are all really easy ways that you can kind of make your Ramadan healthy for you, for sure.
And I know you provide some great recommendations when it comes to, those different recipes where you can make those subtle changes. And I know you post a lot on your Instagram. So I'm sure lots of people will have some questions. So what's the best way for people to get a hold of you, Sister Anar?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can visit me at my website at anarallidina.com. You can follow me on Instagram, where I do a lot of recipe ideas and tips. It's just Anar Allidina. And then I also have a free Facebook group. It's called the Blood Sugar Solution. And actually today, after this, I'm doing a Facebook Live on meal prep. So
Perfect.
Yeah, so I try to go live a few weeks or once a month. So you can definitely check me out there as well.
Perfect. And I'm sure people will, and we'll make sure that we put in links to your websites and to your resources in our description in the video below. So once again, I wanted to thank you, Sister Anar, for your time. It was some fantastic advice that you gave, and I know that people will definitely reach out. So I definitely appreciate it, and hopefully we can do this again in the near future if that's good with you.
Yeah, absolutely. This is my pleasure. I love talking about nutrition, so this is great.